Hi, today we're going to make our one of the kids' favorite sandwich breads. I made some multigrain rolls earlier in the week and I was told by Madden that he was not a fan. So he would like some grilled cheese sandwiches in the next day or two, so I'm going to make their favorite sandwich bread today. So we're going to start by putting a cup of warm water in the mixer here. And then we're going to put a cup of milk. I usually warm the water a little bit warmer than I normally would if I was just using warm water for the bread, because the cold milk is going to even out that temperature, so it's still going to be nice and warm but not too hot to kill the yeast. Now we've got a tablespoon of yeast. It seems like kind of a lot, but we are making 2 loaves of bread today. This recipe makes 2 loaves. You can do several things with it. You can either bake both on the same day and throw one in the freezer for later in the week, or you can hold the dough in the fridge for a couple of days and then bake it. But I've been lately freezing it, and then when we need bread, pull it out of the freezer, let it defrost, and we're good to go. All right, so we've got our yeast and our milk and our water in there. Our next ingredient is going to be a 1/3 cup of honey. What I normally would do is I would take my 1/3 cup of butter that we've got melted, so we're going to put the 1/3 cup of butter in here, and I would pour it into my 1/3 measuring cup to grease the cup and then put my honey in. But since I wanted to be quick today, I greased this cup so that the honey slides out easily. If you've ever had to measure molasses or honey for a recipe, you know that if you don't grease the cup, it is quite difficult to get out. It's been sitting here for a minute, so let me get it quick. Grab a spatula and get it all out. But it does come out a lot easier if you grease the cup first. All right. River. Getting into trouble over there. All right. So now, next ingredient is going to be a teaspoon of salt. Use it for flavor and for controlling the leavening on our bread. All right. And then we've got 2 cups of whole wheat flour. So my whole wheat flour happens to be bread flour right now. A few months ago, when it was hard to find flour, we ordered what we thought was white wheat flour, white wheat bread flour from a co-op, but they had it mislabeled, so it was whole wheat bread flour. The difference between white wheat and whole wheat is the white wheat has a softer consistency. Honestly, when I was using the white wheat, the kids couldn't tell the difference between white flour, and like unbleached flour, and the white wheat, but you still had all the good extra fiber and nutritional benefits of a whole wheat flour. So we don't use this a whole heck of a lot. We use it where we would use it for whole wheat flour, but I was hoping to be able to use it for our pizza crust and things like that. All right, so now we're going to give this a quick spin and come back in a couple minutes and add the white flour. Okay, I've got my whole wheat flour stirred in with my wet ingredients and my yeast and my salt, and now we're going to throw in the white all-purpose flour. The reason I mix it together before I throw the white all-purpose flour in is because I want to make sure everything's mixed together really well. Sometimes if you throw in all your flour at once, you might end up with a clump of salt or a clump of yeast somewhere, and that is not fun to bite into when you are consuming your bread however you like to do it. Like I said, grilled cheese sandwiches are a real big one in this house. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, of course, with a couple of little boys. It's one of their favorites. So I'm going to go ahead, before I throw this 1/3 cup of flour in, and start mixing it together. And like I said, I like to do everything in the KitchenAid mixer just because I can put all my ingredients in and I can walk away. This bread's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to knead together, and while the machine's kneading all my ingredients for me, I can be cleaning up and getting things ready for the next step. So, the other thing with this recipe is on some days, depending on how fresh the flour is or how humid it is, I might need a little more or a little less. So I also like to put the flour in slowly so I can see what kind of consistency. You want the dough to be sticky, but not overly so that you can't handle it. We want it to be able to, after it's first dries, we want to be able to shape it into our loaves without it sticking to our hands. So sometimes I find when I'm shaping the bread, that's when I'll add in a little extra flour. Especially when you're using whole wheat flour in a recipe. Whole wheat flour actually absorbs more water and liquid than all-purpose or white flour does. So I like to let this sit for about an hour to make sure that that whole wheat flour has absorbed everything it's going to absorb. So we're getting a nice sticky dough together, and we'll come back in a minute and I'll show you what it looks like when I put it in the bowl to proof. Alright, so our dough has been kneaded by our mixer here, and like I said, it's a pretty wet dough, especially when you first take it out before it sits. So what we're going to do is we're going to just spray a little spray oil in this bowl. This is where our dough is going to have its rise and take a rest. So, like I said, this is enough for 2 loaves. Sometimes, and what we might end up doing with it tonight is making a loaf of bread and also some rolls. Because it does have the milk and the butter in it, it makes a nice soft roll dough as well. If we end up having barbecue sandwiches for dinner tonight, I'm going to make the half the dough into rolls. So I'm just going to scoop it out into our bowl here. And like I said, it is a sticky dough, and if it's still a little too sticky after its first rise, then we will knead a little extra flour into it before we put it in for its final proofing and when we shape it into our loaves and our rolls. All right. And then we're going to just set this towel over it and put it in the corner here and come back to it in about an hour. Okay, so our bread dough has risen, as you can see, quite a bit here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it, and I'm going to use this little kitchen scale. I use this little kitchen scale a lot. I bought it probably 15 years ago for $10 or $15, and I use it when I'm going to be dividing dough. I use it when I'm making dough a lot of times. If I have a recipe by weight, which is much easier, which we'll do a lot of recipes by weight later. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my ball of dough and I'm going to tear out my bowl real quick so I get a nice 0. And I've got almost 3 pounds of dough here. So we're going to divide it so that there's 1.5 pounds of dough that we're going to use for the bread, and then we're going to use another 1.5 pounds to make rolls because we decided we are going to have barbecue for dinner tonight. So, alright, so now I'm going to take one of my sections of dough, and I forgot to pull out my flour, but it feels like it's not too sticky, so I think we'll be okay. And we're just going to pull the dough into a little rectangle shape here that we're going to roll up and we're going to put in our greased loaf pan. So, just going to give it a nice roll. We're going to tuck the edges under a little bit. And I've got my greased loaf pan here. We're going to stick this in here. And I'm going to cover it with a towel. I'm going to use the same towel I used to proof my dough before. And I'm going to stick it over here in the over here on the counter and let it rise for 1 hour to 1.5 hours until it's coming about 1 inch up over top of the pan. And then we're going to throw it in the oven. But we'll get to that in a minute. So now for our rolls, I've got a sheet pan lined with a Silpat. And we found that we like, if we're going to be using these for buns, about a 3-ounce piece of dough is perfect. So I'm going to kind of try to measure these out real quick here. I don't like to make a big mess, so it's easier to just use the bowl that we proof the dough in. Normally I just kind of set this here. And we've got our 3 ounces of dough, and then I take it and just kind of smush it out. This one's got a little air bubble here we're going to pop. Smush it out into a little, kind of take it between your fingers like this and stick a finger in the middle, and it creates this nice little dough ball. And we're going to let them rise separately on the baking sheet here. Okay, as you can see, our dough has risen nicely. It's gently domed over the top of the pan. And all of our little buns look happy and poofy like we want them to look. So now we're gonna go ahead and throw them in the oven. The buns are gonna go in the oven for about 20 minutes. The bread's gonna go for about 30 to 35. So we'll see you back when these little puppies are baked.
Right now I'm going to try my mom's rolls. I'm trying to grab one right now.
How are they?
Good.
Good. Yep, so the rolls are baked. They're nice golden brown. And then I'm gonna grab the bread here. Let me grab a hot pad. So we've got our bread. Again, nice golden brown. So the rolls baked in the oven for about 20 minutes. Actually, for exactly 20 minutes. The bread went in the oven for 30 minutes. And it's been out of the oven for just a little bit. And so bear with me. Oops, I stuck my thumb in the bread while I try to do this one-handed. So normally it's a lot smoother motion, but again, trying to film and take the bread out. So yep, that's what happens when you stick your thumb in the end of the bread. But it came out looking nice otherwise, and we'll be having some barbecue on these buns tonight. And we'll see you next time on Baking with the Bolyers.